The Indian government has formally cautioned Indian nationals in Canada against the threat of hate crimes and anti-India activity. The advisory comes a few days after the Sikhs for Justice, a group banned by India in 2019, organized what they laughably called a Khalistan Referendum. That's right, a referendum on Punjab, sitting safely 10,300 kilometers away at the other end of the world. The Indian government had strongly objected to this planned convention. But the Canadian government under Justin Trudeau said, "Nahi baba, hum kuch nahi kar sakte. Ye to legitimate democratic protest hai." There are 500,000 Sikhs in Canada, accounting for 1.4% of the country's population. Not a big number, but not a small number either. But what Trudeau permitted was a convention of a movement that has a historic record of Pakistan-backed terrorism that seeks the secession of a sovereign part of India, a country that Canada has close diplomatic, trade, cultural, political and economic ties with. But you know Trudeau, like any politician, he has his own local pulls and pressures. But remember, it's one thing to not crack down actively on so-called Khalistani terrorists. It's another thing to permit and then defend the right of such a referendum. In some Indian eyes, this is understandably being seen as tantamount to an act of war. Of course, it's laughable that thousands of men assembling with flags for a free lunch in Brampton is being described as a referendum. How brave to do it all that distance away. But this isn't something to scoff at for India, because concurrent to the buzz around this Khalistani Nautanki was a series of hate crimes, including the defacing of an Indian temple in Ontario. Pakistan, which has tried and failed since the 90s to somehow breathe life into the stubbornly dead issue of Khalistan, has tried desperately during the farmers' protests in India too. What Pakistan and these so-called Khalistanis sitting nicely out of range in Canada don't understand is that Khalistan is real only in their heads. The people of Punjab and true Punjabis have never embraced it. Enough pandering has happened to pro-Khalistan voices by our politicians and civil society in the name of elections and protests. Enough gyan has been dropped by those widening their eyes and saying, "Nahi, nahi, yaar, there are traces of Khalistani sentiment still prevalent in some pockets of the Sikh community." Here's the truth. Khalistan, as we know it today, is the wet dream of Pakistan's terror machinery and a group of frustrated folks in a faraway nation they don't dare seek land from. That's something to think about.